Happy Thanksgiving. This is going to be an interesting one. This one I'm going to show objective observations on how bigots or of any race or any or personally externalizers, uh, it externalized personalities recruit weak souls, weak people, weak men and women into their cause to maintain weakness, to maintain cowardice. We're going to see this on two parts, one feminine and one masculine, and then one of a on the geopolitical position. So the first one, it will just happen recently, like just as I get it in here, is local. It's masculine, sort of masculine, because remember, they're id externalized, and we know that in the physical growth, the stomach, then the heart, then the brain, I think, or maybe something like that. But it's definitely the stomach that first evolves, and the stomach. The theory is the stomach has evolved the brain and the heart for its own uses, which is the id, and then if we go into metaphysics, it gets a little bit differently, but not so much the evolution, the physical evolution, but then metaphysics then goes on to everything else. So, but we're not going to go into metaphysics because that's none of Kathleen Kennedy's. Because all she's been doing is using these to use to her story group and then stealing my brand and things. So we go with the first one. The very first one is as I'm returning today after finally getting certain things out of the way. We now know that McRaven and Stavridis are not working for the Joint Chiefs. Now, Stavridis will then think, and McRaven will think, well, we'll just kind of let him go, and then we'll set the warrant later or whatever, because they'll try to say that I said some things or blah blah blah. That's not going to happen. Right now, Stavridis and McRaven are actively working to try to overthrow the Constitution because they know if the Democrats do not uphold the Constitution through the House before it turns over in January 3rd, then there will be an opening to completely turn over the Constitution and return that the South must rise again. And this is I know they know this because there's the meme bubbled up where they're trying the Republicans are trying to say the Democrats are doing this, which is quite odd. But then that goes back to the neo-conservative and neoliberal idea, which are basically the same thing because they're neither liberal and neither are conservative. It's just simply corporate power controlling everyone else. Now, as I was saying, as I was coming back in, now the individual, the name, I don't know if it's his name is Gavin or if it's some other name. I don't really care. I was meeting with another individual in 104. His name is, so for this we're going to say I for the moment. And that was a purposeful. That's one of the what is it? They're one of their. The idea was for me to see them, and this is one of their main tactical. It's like, oh, I see, you see, and therefore I'm going to create a emotional response set, out of you. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I wanted to go down to 104 and knocked on the door, listening to him, and listened to what he was saying. Oh, he's going to go roofing and stuff, and back to Utah and blah blah blah. But I was listening to the third and fourth remote beneath that he himself cannot even hear. And I wasn't even reaching into his mind. I was just listening. It's just, people think I have to think hard about these things. No, it's just who I am. It's just as easy as breathing to me. Just as being a shitbag is as easy as being to Gavin. because he would have never made it through Buds without, if he's a SEAL, he would have never made it through Buds without McRaven, and he knows this. He also knows that as NSW, as from my last command, I step onto the stage, he needs to sit his fucking ass down. But him and McRaven, so I gave him the option. McRaven and Strivitas, chill the fuck out. They sort of faked chill the fuck out, and that's why they had him show up. To show we're still in charge. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Good to know. And so I'm watching the guy 104, and I know for a fact that the Joint Chiefs wanted this guy in 104 to be recruited into the Berets, and he actually probably would have been good. But the problem is, as he's being corrupted to be a bigot, because Gavin is a bigot, as McRaven is a bigot, as was Rob a bigot, they can't work very well with people who aren't bigots because their behavior is so deplorable. And so as I was sitting there, I was listening to this situation, and I'm going, okay, so this individual 104, name I, we're going to say for the moment, he has a choice to make. He can continue working with this guy, Gavin, and McRaven. I left my computer in because I knew that he was going to go in. And Gavin and McRaven are making it look like, oh, well, we're still here. You didn't have any power. And I said, actually, and I had stated this as I was just speaking, since I'm always being monitored, they have to leave Gavin in, well, the Joint Chiefs, or they were saying that they are actually running this illegal operation. So since it's not a training exercise because you tried to assassinate me on multiple occasions, and they'll immediately say, well, we weren't. No, yes, you were. And harassment of a legal citizen of the United States, once again, that's illegal as well. Therefore, it can't be the Joint Chiefs, or that would be against all laws that the military has to follow. Two, since my only goal is to uphold the Constitution, they are actively trying to overturn the Constitution. This I've already proven on multiple occasions. So this individual in 104 has been promised he'll go in and be cool, and he can go be a cool guy. He will not be allowed to get in, because what even Strivitas and McRaven do not realize is the Joint Chiefs have left them hanging, just like they would leave everybody else hanging. If they had a mandate from the Joint Chiefs, they have it no longer. They didn't know that. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, you know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh, yes, I do. And they know this now as they're thinking through it. They'll make some phone calls. Joint Chiefs will say, oh, yeah, whatever. Because they'll let them walk them right into the trap. Because I'm guaranteed they went through and started digging deeper into how they got to become admirals and what they did and what their true beliefs are. So Gavin, who now thinks he's all safe and sound, is actually not so safe and sound. Then the other thing is corporations have once again gotten back to fucking King Charles playing his shit, being a dumbass. Conservative Party. Whoa, we found a loophole. Nope. The only loophole you have is to reassert the Magna Carta, and the only way you can do that is by upholding the contract. Now, you might find some other slightly whatevers, but they will never be that. And yes, I do, just as Prince Harry, have the power to remove you from this existence, Gavin, so I would suggest you chill the fuck out. Now, his ego It's not going to handle that very well. It's not handling it very well because I knew he was listening. And I, in 2 at 104, will be placed into the civil suit that's going to be coming down the pike. He has a choice to make. Will he make the right choice? I doubt it. That would take courage, integrity, and he's been taught to be racist, to be honest with you. To be, and then the bigots are slowly pulling his racism into bigotry, which means he'll have to self-hatred. That's how that works. That's how they do it. Oh, you one of us. So it's either side. That's how the gangs get young men and women to get into the gangs, and it's how McRaven has gotten all these guys to work for him to overthrow the Constitution, because there's no way in hell Gavin could have gotten through. He damn sure is not going to get the damn neck. Not now, at least. Unless he might, maybe after 10 to 15 years he might learn something, but I doubt very seriously, because that would take a tremendous amount of humility and willingness to improve himself as a person. And now that they know that he's Rob's or Hammett's protege, that he was brought through by Rob and Hammett and McRaven, that he did not actually make it through Buds on his own. If he went through Buds, I'm assuming he did, but because he moves like one, but he moves like a West Coaster, and he's also pretty much a near West Coast Nazi. He won't make it to Dam Neck, which is the goal of almost every operator. And then they're devaluing. Well, he was just this da 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 da. But he also knows that anybody from NSWDG steps on to the floor. Doesn't matter what your command is. We speak. You shut the fuck up and listen. So I can't have little punk ass Gavin thinking he's he's daddy. He's King Daddy Big Balls. And then they'll come up with the next, you're not NSW. I would suggest you shut up, kid. You'll fuck around and find out. Because as I said, you have no protections. You are illegally attempting to overthrow the Constitution of the United States and the Crown of Great Britain. Okay. Now the next one is I'm going to it's going to be twofold. It's one about, another one is where we had Renesky, which was one of the course directors at Full Sail, who was also working with Kroll, who should have brought me on to do branding, blah blah blah, but his racism and bigotry between those three, Renesky didn't realize I knew that he was a bigot and he was playing his shit. So when he started to think he was playing me, I just sat there and watched and went, oh, that's interesting. But also then DiGilio, he's a nice guy ish. He lost his wife, whatever. He's now wearing a fascie, very easily to be manipulated. I guess that all this started, he went and got a degree in branding from the University of Illinois. But no biggies, that's cool. Full Sail would need that. But that it was to counter. The only reason they did that was to counter, to say, well, you don't know. They always devalue. That's one of their devaluement plays. But I also knew that DiGilio was part of that triple cohort. Actually, it's usually 4 or 5. They can't big it by themselves, which we'll get to later in a second here, as far as that's concerned. But so we're going to show what I was saying by this is we put out the picture of this thing, and now understand YouTube DiGilio is a public person, so therefore I can say his name, just like Robin is a public person who I know personally. Same thing. And they put out a public picture. So if he tries any bullshit, or if somebody says something about that, and if you say about this person, Gavin, oh well, he's harassing me illegally. And McRaven's a public person. Stavridis is a public person. And this dude Gavin's name's probably not even Gavin, actually. They're going to throw him under the bus anyways. He's too stupid to know it. He's young and dumb and thinks he's, normal young dumb, think he's bulletproof. No biggies. So DiGilio has the thing, but what the main thing is to show how they try to constantly transfer their bigotry to the next person in their cohort, and to hide from the shadows their racism and bigotry, and then get everything stirred up. You can see that within what we saw with, apparently there was a shooting again at in Colorado attacking gay folks. Now I have stated very clearly, I'm personally not a big fan, don't really care, but they have the right to exist and they have the right to equal protection under the law. They're still human beings, but their behavior, the behavior of where they're using black men to down and kick down at, and then they never attack Caucasian men, states that they're trying to use black men to be dominant over, and we can't have that. And then they also, within the language LGBT, easiest way is science. And then they add the Q and the plus. That's just BS. So let's say here, go text. So this is, it's straight female right there. And then, let's see, gay male here. Then you would go, if you look at it as a continuum, then being female, and then you have, of course, obviously the trans person. This is all science. If it wasn't for science, I'd probably be just like anybody else. Like, what the hell's their problem? But they are free to be who they are as long as they leave people alone. But when they start playing the whole little the bad behavior is bad behavior, which is you don't respect another person's boundaries, that's bad behavior. The whole Constitution is designed to counter that. Even the rights to publicity that Jay-Z and all these other people think they're going to steal. And then, you have corporations saying we're people. Okay, well, if you're people, that means you have to abide by the same laws of people. Well, and they start tap dancing. So that's one thing. And then another we're going to go over is, I was in a quote argument. It was mostly with a woman who I've went to class with. Don't know her physically personally, but I've known her for years over Facebook. So you can obviously know a person over Facebook. And but the thing is, I've watched her grow. I watched her go through the mourning of her dad. I've watched listen to her state, how close she is to her dad, the masculine, and also, but the main thing is where she definitely wants to, stated multiple times actually, wants to break the generational curse of the toxicity that's been brought on them and the generational behavior. And she's done a very good job. Her son seems to be a good dude. His girlfriend, which will probably be his wife, same thing, same chill vibe. But she's got that whole black woman toxic thing going sometimes. So it's kind of like, you got definitely keep a psychological distance from her, but at the same time, still maintain that, going to school, professional friendship to a degree. So she put out this thing stated. Now the background is important. She's at the blackboard. She's found one of those where you put your emoji and thinking. And what was it? It was when men don't realize how dangerous it is for women. Now stop right there. Full stop. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when that is being stated? Exactly. For most men, what is the first thing, and women and straight women? I don't know because I'm not in between. What is the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it masculine saving, protector, or is it masculine dominance? Bit of both, probably, right? In Greek mythology, and also stated within, I think Robert Greene or a couple other different authors, talked about Mars and the god of war and how there was a difference between Athena and Ares. Ares had cohorts, kind of feminine. It becomes about ego, and those cohorts you have to have. It's also very, the reason is that because of the cohorts, it's also very feminine because it's very narcissistic. It's the bloodlust of Ares, the masculine of war, destruction. Then you have Athena, the goddess of war, of the part of Mars, because Mars is a singular god, right? But Athena is the shield maiden, holds the Medusa on her shield, the feminine fear, but with all the connections. Because remember, the feminine is her network. A woman is her network. A narcissist, whether masculine or feminine, is always trying to create a network because the meme entity can't live without that network. It doesn't exist. So when a masculine becomes war, he has to get his cohorts, war of destruction, war of hatred, kind of like what Putin's doing. That's why he's going to lose, because he's waging war as Ares. It's a war of fear, of selfishness. And then they need to keep that fear going. If Athena rises not out of fear but out of care and love and defense, well, then Athena, usually that's the reason Athena is the most dangerous. Even if one goes to war against their enemies, even if it's a defensive, offensive war, it's still out of love and care that there is growth, that there is more. So when the masculine becomes the feminine in his war state, he is more dangerous. When the masculine becomes less masculine and becomes more feminine in his war state, he's less dangerous. That doesn't make sense. If he becomes more Athena on the external, he becomes the god of, he's thinking and becoming more. If he's just all Aries and ego of the lower self, he or she becomes less. They just become bloodlust, and they have to keep taking, and their bloodlust can never be satisfied because it's just infinite hate, which means their energy lowers and lowers, and the only way to keep digging out of that lowering of hate is to take and take and take, and there's nothing until they are nothing more than dust themselves. So, anyways, why was I saying this? But that was back to this dear friend. So she has this. Oh yeah, because she stated about protection. I was talking. I said, well, my resources, my choice. Protection is a masculine action. Now they would say, well, that's a feminine action. Protection is a feminine action because of Athena. Yes and no. It is when the creation, because the feminine stands for a creation, when does a man become truly, truly protective of something? When he has a family. When he has something that he cares about. When he sees that overcomes his superego, or his ego, I need to take and destroy. The fire becomes strength instead of floating all around and being blown with by the wind of any little thing. The lily hates that type of man. Then the lily will get her Aries and starts attacking him. That's the flying monkeys of narcissism. And the lily is the lily Lutu demon. So now back to this. So she's in this conversation or non-conversation. She immediately, my statement was, my resource is my choice. What should I protect? Why should I protect you if you're going to give away all of the goods, all of your resources, the resources that I care about, positive emotions, listening, communicating, being true to yourself and not just throwing your emotions when you can't deal with something around? Why should I give those? Why should I give protection to that, essentially? And then instead of answering that, she spits out a negative emotion, whatever she said. I didn't care. It was the emotion state that mattered. I went, okay. Then she reels. Then I'm still arguing, and then she reels some dude in, good old simp. Then she gives him a little positive reinforcement. And then I'm stating, I realize this is not just her. This is all of Black African American women when it comes to standing up for the Constitution. They're running. Actually, I've known this for a while, but they are actually running. They are terrified to stand up. It was just like when years ago, this chick, as I've stated earlier once before, this chick was who was blah 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 blah, but all of a sudden when she needed to go do something, she was sitting there trying to hide behind me, and I'm looking over at the first class, going, "Do you see this crap?" And I'd back up, she'd keep backing up, and she's backing to do everything she could. So I back all the way. I must have backed up at least a good, see here, at least a good, good 3-4 meters, 2 to 3 meters at least. And I had to back it up into a fence, and there she is, trying to stay between me and the first class. This one who was all mouth, but no action. Same thing. Now I assume. Then they got to the dude who was the flying monkey. I said something about that, but mostly writing it as overly logical. They couldn't understand what I was saying. He was like word salad, blah blah blah, and then they're doing ad hominem. So what do I expect him to say? They'll probably give some other BS because then I stated, okay, back to the original thing. Did you not? Did your dad? Because she didn't put this in public. I'm not going to actually. I wasn't originally going to show it, but since it was she shared it not public, I didn't think I had read this present time. I don't think that would be right. The DiGilio picture, the dude's wearing a fascie, and that's a picture for a Full Sail. So that's a public picture, and it was posted as in a public statement. But he's wearing a fascie. Fascie is basically when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. And this is the haircut of these far right idiots. And iron, and what is the fasci? The fasci is the haircut that the Nazis used to wear in World War II. So, irony at its fat and its finest. Now, rolling into this, so, but back to this chick, back to Mrs. Savage. Do I expect her to do, or will the simp jump in? I assume the simp will jump in, and I don't expect this individual to actually answer because from a meme set, she's only answering for for women in general, not willing to stand up, and that's the reason Michelle Obama released her book now. I mean, she might have had it out there or whatever, but she knows she's savvy enough to know when to role play to work the Zeitgeist. After 8 years being in the White House, she's savvy enough, and that's the Zeitgeist. Black women are terrified. The moment you have the most amount of power, the moment you have the most amount to gain, you run and worry over what little you have to lose. This is why Hillary Clinton called the black Americans in the South, when she was running against Bernie, her firewall, because she knew they would never stand up. Or that, just as we have with Jay-Z, thinking, well, he got control over black Americans and I ain't gonna do blah, 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 fucking blah. I don't really care. I assume they're not gonna show up. I assume no one's gonna show up. I assume that no one is going to be there. And I assume the 1% are going to do everything they can to kill me. And they probably will succeed. I assume all of these things. But I'm not a coward. And a candy ass like them. Or all of those who sit. And I am not going to allow them to take my name and use it for their own monetary uses. As they have been doing. As I stated to Jay-Z, he owes me $10 million, and every day that he doesn't pay, he will pay. Either I'm while I'm alive or after I am dead. It does not matter, and it will not be just in the jurisdiction of the United States, because he's harming not just people in the United States. He's harming people in Jamaica. He's harming people in South Africa. He's harming people in Rwanda. He's harming people in Japan, Australia, Europe. His ego, because he can't get through his thick fucking skull. We cannot allow the criminal elements to think they are above us. Civilization, the crown, and the Constitution. Period, full stop. That plays right in to the hands of the bigots, which Don, who's made money, once again, full YouTube, this is a public facing person, off of the ALU. He's made money off of Tiffany Cross, and then they lost Georgia, and then trying to play me to say it was me, but they never did anything that I said to do. They did what they wanted to do, and that's why they said, well, we don't owe you. Well, yes, you do, because you failed. And you owe Stacey Abrams $1 million and Val Demings $1 million. And me, I want my 200,000 plus my 10 million per day. So it started since Thursday, so it's 10 million Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What was it? 7 days or 10 million? Is there 20 million now? Outstanding. Because by the time I'm done with you, Jay-Z, for thinking you have the rights to the publicity of me, and thinking you can get in the middle of royal business, you won't have a pot to piss in. Now I know you'll sit there and be like, who does nigga think he blah blah fucking blah. You know who I am. And my grandfather was too. We are what you wish you could be and hate that you cannot be. But more so less than what your hatreds are of me is your hatreds of yourself, and you do not have enough humility to even help your own people. Yeah, I was watching this video with Snoop, and he was talking to this, like, hey, you need to work together, you need to do the things necessary, suck it up sometimes, help them if they go in, help them when they come out, you know. And this little homie steps in, and he was sitting there, didn't believe anything Snoop was saying, but was just parroting. Snoop put him in his place. He was pissed. I was like, I suggest, Snoop, you help your boy figure this shit out. And you're not gonna like, oh, we'll just play him later. Nah, that ain't how this works. But I don't, as I said, I don't expect you to show up, so it's not a big deal. I will do what I believe. And I believe in the idea of the Constitution, just from a purely pragmatic, logical structure. It is one of the most amazing documents ever. Which, speaking of which leads me to Mr. Mike Pence. Mike Pence just recently stated that the Congress, does not have the right to call him in to speak about what he said with the President of the United States. Separation of powers. And I very much do believe in the separation of powers as co-equal branches of the government, just as we know that you with your lawyer cannot work together to break the law and keep attorney-client privilege, neither can you work with the president to overthrow the Constitution and keep presidential privilege or presidential executive privilege. So I am going to go with the fact I'm going to assume Mike Pence is a true patriot. And he's just saying that so he can say, well, that's what I thought. But I am a patriot and I believe in the Constitution. And yes, the president was doing things to break the law and overthrow the Constitution. So as much as I disagree with this, I will sit in front of the Congress. Now, do I really believe he's going to do that? No, he has no backbone. But I hope he'll come up with some BS like that or something. Give him the BS cover he needs. Because anything else is just cowardice. And unconstitutional. Which brings me back to Miss Kathleen Kennedy, my favorite. Not. Remember, I stated that a woman at the very beginning of this. A woman is her network. 1, 2, 3. So her network is her husband, Ryan Johnson. What's his name again? Did the first and second, 7 and 9. J.J. Abrams, and Michael Snyder, who I went to school with. Don got played by this other dude named Drew in school. That was the bigot. That I didn't realize was a bigot, and then he ran to this other dude named Carlos, and then Carlos and Don, because Carlos was jealous, and then he played those two to attack me to cover his ass. Well, Drew and Mike they were friends until Drew was more of a shyster than even Mike can deal with. But Mike is connected to J.J. Abrams, which is connected to Ryan Johnson, which is connected to Kathleen Kennedy's husband, whatever his name is. I don't care. It's not worth my time to worry about or even look up. But that's her four-part cohort where she sits in the middle. And she's been setting up Ryan Johnson to take over Lucasfilm. That's the whole on again, off again BS. Californians do this all the time. And narcissists and psychopaths do this all the time as well. That's the whole don't really have to be good. We'll just kind of cover your bullshit. That's basically how Hammett got through, and the same as this whatever his name, if it's Gavin dude as well. In the same way that McRaven and Stavridis does that with the Admiralty, as shown by what they did to Admiral Losi. Find a small little thing and then blow it out of proportion for no reason to cover their own ass. So, Mike, you always have this permanent duper's delight smile. J.J. Abrams likes to be thinking he's more clever, bobbleheads all the time, and Ryan Johnson, same thing. And same with her husband. They all have the same personality. Well, let me inform you of this right now. Just as Kennedy has a sword to her throat and a gun to her head, so do you. Because you like to be clever and think it doesn't have any repercussions. Since you're one set of thought processing, and you're willing to overturn the Constitution of the United States, to which I have sworn an oath to, and it might say, well, you're enlisted, but that is still the oath to the Constitution, and then an oath to the Crown of Great Britain and the Commonwealth. Well then, welcome to the monkey house. You don't get to get rights without responsibilities. JJ was gonna say, well, he said, well, yeah, I kind of didn't follow the lore, ha ha, and then he'll kind of roll back, and nah, that's not what's gonna happen. She's always played Overwatch and cover fire for all of you guys. You go down, she goes down. I die, you die. It's a fairly simple equation. King Charles wants his power back, or then he has to uphold the contract. Period, full stop, no matter what anybody else tries to play. He wants to regain control over the lords. He has to uphold the contract. Now, the assholes start trying to create laws afterwards after he upholds the contract. Well, then that'll weaken your position. I would suggest you don't do such a stupid thing. She whispers. Oh, the queen consort whispers. Someone remind her of that sword is forever over her head. And she needs to whisper a little bit, more like a whole lot less, and back to the point of almost nearly shutting the fuck up in private. Because if you don't, well, that's not my thing. But 2.5 billion people and that many souls and that much energy directed their anger towards you, I don't think I'm not going to do anything. I just sit back and watch, either from heaven or wherever the heck I'm at, because you won't survive. The crown will fall. You have to uphold the contract and uphold the Constitution. Ain't that a son of a bitch? And you don't change the laws afterwards. Because then you'll be falling right back in to the weakness of the corporations who allowed Putin to sit his people in the House of Lords. And he's still there. These people are still there. They're still undercutting Great Britain and the Commonwealth, still undercutting Australia, still undercutting New Zealand, Jamaica, and all the other countries that are relying on trade and thinking that, hey, this will be a fair act. You do you. I'm going to do what I do, but you do you. I'll just sit back and watch you die. Not by my hand, but by your own. So the DNC, as I said, you still owe me my 200,000. Jay-Z owns me my 10 million. And whoever else is using my name. Because when I stated in that email to Don, I meant agency as in you are my agent, you do as I direct, not I'm your agent as your broker. Now that's not how that works. And I was pretty sure that's when I said in agency to me. And since we know this is now not the Joint Chiefs, it has to be corporate espionage who probably picked this up, like, well, we can make some money off this, then you're violating my rights to my publicity. You're violating my rights to privacy. And a whole bunch of other rights. McRaven and Stavridis are no longer connected to the Joint Chiefs. If they were connected in the first place. I'm assuming they thought they were. To think that they can operate an assassination on U.S. soil, or off U.S. soil on an American citizen. And as I said, Stavridis will try to do the underground blah blah. No, it's not. And they're going to say, well, you said you were about to do so on an American citizen. I go, yep, because they're trying to break, what is it, treaties. Remember, Lestat Samoa. So the kid in 104 will just say, he cannot go into the military. As long as he maintains working with McRaven and Stavridis. And Gavin keeps playing right now. I'm letting it flow. Gavin did not realize they have to let him stay, because if he was removed, then it would say that he was working with on the behest of the Joint Chiefs. And we now know that they're not working on the behest of the Joint Chiefs. Be afraid, kid. You have no protections. You're an arrogant little idiot. And if you expect any of the team to come save you, well, guess what? They too will be attempting to overthrow the Constitution and the Crown of Great Britain, breaking treaties. Which means McRaven and Stavridis are breaking treaties, overturning the Constitution, and overturning the Crown of Great Britain and the Magna Carta. And you will go down in history as a traitor to the Constitution of the United States of America, the thing you are supposed to be upholding. But of course, you're going to say you're not. So, we're cool. But even if you aren't connected to the military, that means you're definitely just a mercenary That's even better for me. So I already went through the whole tragedy of what was going on with the gays. You know, there's transvestite, blah blah blah. You have the right to exist, but you don't have the right to be an asshole. And also, if you are to, you no longer get to hang on to use black men, because every time I would do something I do well, Kathleen Kennedy trots you out, and then you create a story. The last one with Black Panther, something, and you can even hear when you read it, it's like I didn't even read the first past the first two sentences because it was a waste of my time. But there wasn't anything about in the Artemis, which is mostly Caucasians over at NASA, unfortunately still. Didn't hear anything you said about that. It's always when a black African American male or a melanated male does something or does well, they trot out the gays to create association, which devalues the black male in relation to the straight male, the straight melanated male in relation to the straight not or Caucasoid male. And that's how you, in which devalues them, and that you will not, you're not, and then especially when you try to use it my name afterwards. So I'll bring something up, positive vibes. They roll out the gays, negative vibes, or association. So anything positive is always then associated with the gays, or then they'll try to associate it with the gangs, devaluing the straight male as he's trying to build his family, which then destroys the neighborhoods. And then the thing is, then you have the gangbangers, because they say, well, you can't say anything. Then they use the cops to enforce this structure, because unlike dudes out in the country or most people, you call the cops, you expect them to have the authority to use force or to help you by doing this. But in the black American community, the cops are basically the jailers, and the jailers who it's the cops, the gangbangers, and the gays are the jailers. And then everyone's attacking the straight male who's trying to just do the average and do the up and up. And then culturally, they start attacking and piling on, which led to things like Clarence Thomas. He probably, he worked hard, got his degree, comes back to the neighborhood, and the women just talk trash to him. Now, I'm not saying I like everything he's doing, but that's why you get those type of Uncle Toms. I'm just pragmatic. I don't like your behavior. It's not about race. I just don't like your behavior. I don't want a fat chick. Sorry, not my thing. Hot's hot. Doesn't matter what. That is a scientifically proven thing. Hot is hot. Doesn't matter what her skin tone is. Hot is hot. It's all about proportions. So, and and bad behavior is bad behavior. And what's acceptable behavior is between two individuals. If a woman wants to be with a dude who's completely emasculated and he's good with it, no problem. That's between those two. But in general, men do not want to deal with a woman. Come home and she's all telling him what to do. Now, there's a story in South Korea. I was watching this chick. She was married to Samsung heirs, whatever. She ends up getting out of that whole situation because her dad had raised her right to take over the company. So she's, boss babe. But she's now with the dude who's in Squid Game. But do you think, even though she's boss babe outside and everything else, she comes home and starts telling that dude, you need to do this, you need to do that, blah 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 blah, not listening to any of his opinions, not listening to anything he has to say. If you believe that's what's happened, you're an idiot. Now, of course, she has maids and other things because of her station, but still, if you think that She's gonna come home, be boss babe, and start bossing and cutting her man off and cutting his nuts off. No, that's not gonna happen. Not with that gentleman, at least. Now there are some men that's what they want. I'm not one of them, and most men are not one of don't want that. And then on top of it, not being willing to stand up when the time has come. And the time has come. For black Americans to stand up. Now, I place this on what needs to be done. So the president has blown through, former president has blown through. The 14th says he doesn't have to show up. Doesn't have to show up for to take the deposition. That's BS. That's a defiance of Congress. He physically sent his agents to Congress and they violated the separation of powers. Therefore, they violated the Constitution and they did it on his command. So much so, he wanted to go down there. The man attempted a coup, and all people can do is wring their hands. Are you flipping kidding me? The world is watching. People like Orban is watching. He thinks Americans are weak. He thinks like Americans, the poor Americans, white Americans, were too brainwashed to stand up for the thing that we say matters to us the most. So much so, he's telling the European Union he's siding with Putin, and he's blocking aid to Ukraine. EU is not going to pay him that 8 billion. They better not pay him that 8 billion. They better find a way around this. If it means doing a loan someplace else and then that loan goes back to Ukraine, but you darn sure better not give that money to him. While I agree with some of the things, sometimes, hey, that's what people do. He is backslid on his democracy, and you paying him shows weakness. And that's another signal to Putin that Europe is weak. Orban's his canary in the coal mine. And that then signals to Xi that the West, and that Africa and South America, that whole democracy thing, that's more of a suggestion. And this is the reason right here. This will be the most difficult thing you'll ever do in your life. And this is what the conversation with Monique, the individual, was about. Then I had another argument, not so much an argument with another friend of mine, where I then took a part of that and posted it in my resources, my choice. But then I was stating equal justice under the law, and I know he's arguing with me on purpose because, well, he's a philosopher, and that's what we do. No good idea must go unchallenged, and I'd be him knowing me, he would damn sure not accept me letting me off the hook without being able to thoroughly battle down on what I'm thinking. And I would expect nothing less because he's a trusted individual, and we're of the same cohort, genetic and social cohort. And I've known him years, and he was, back when I was still being doop 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 when I was young and dumber. So this is what needs to be done. Because as we know, tyranny is rights without responsibility. Freedom is rights with responsibility. And at this moment, you have the 1% Working class has the 1% on the ropes, but all you need to do is keep punching and they're going to fall. But it's going to take courage to stand in there. Pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Get the 10, the Build Back Better through at its original price points. Stop this march to autocracy. Thanksgiving is this week. I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Tomorrow I'm going to go try to buy a car again. I know that 1% has blocked that from the last time. Bad, um, regardless of my what is it? Bad credit. Doesn't matter. That's not what stopped it. Because I know this is all on the web. And then I'm going to head do some other things. The 1% are going to try to stop. Once again, they're going to try to put it, Canex my positions in my computer as I let Dimwit get into the place. Dimwit, that's the Gavin dude or whatever his fucking name is. Because I know they're check on whatever, trace batteries, whatever the frick they're doing with whatever. And then I'm going to do some other things, and the 1% is going to try to block that. And then in their attempts to block that, they'll be proving everything I'm saying. They're expecting the working poor, the AAPI, the working poor whites, the AAPI, the regular, middle class whites, because it was mostly upper middle class whites who are all first home capital or whatever. They're expecting the working class to give up their rights so they can, quote, kick down. You have until January, 2nd to stop this. To hold the line. To stand up for democracy. And from a black American's perspective, to finally get capital invested in your neighborhoods. And you might say, well, look what happened in Mississippi. Well, the law school of Jackson needs to actually be suing Mississippi because that was a misappropriation of federal funds. Because all the money that Clyburn was getting to his constituents was removed and sent to the suburbs. And probably was pretty damn illegal. As we've seen because the brazenness of what was going on with Brett Favre shows that they were pretty damn illegal. So Jackson State needs to get on that. Start suing. Because I'm guarantee you there's some money to be made in there. Just on selfish best interest. 7 million over 10 years. Pass the Build Back Better. Pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Dismantle the oligarchs' plan to use the state houses to call a constitutional convention. Return the motto of the United States to E pluribus unum. And change to under God to with God, or remove it. And that one's the most important because only under God states that we have a king, and we are Americans. We do not have a king. We are justice, equal justice under the law. This will take courage. That all persons show up, surround the Capitol, Do not allow them to leave until they've done what is reset the Constitution in order. Make it a big ass party. But they got Jay-Z all stuck with his BS, drinking the Kool-Aid, being all jealous, just like Carlos was. And then Don got played once again by another bigot. Which, speaking of, was Mike, Ryan, JJ, and Kathleen's husband. This is a true threat. The Constitution falls. You exist no more. If I die, you exist no more. The gun and sword at her throat is the same one that's at yours. Because you like to sit behind the walls and throw shit. And say how clever we are. And then you would come out and be like, well, okay, I guess we'll help. Normal California BS. Now, you have rights. You have a responsibility to those rights. And she's been throwing us under the bus to China for 15 years by making all those micro concessions that change things in our movies. And then getting all uppity about it. All right, gamers, as far as Ukraine, how are your strategies coming? Are we going through Luhansk? Are we going to wait through winter? It's getting cold. Another thing we have to figure out is how do we import small wind turbines? We know wind is more so in the winter. It actually could serve to our purposes. Some people are confused about what am I talking about with the Bernoulli effect. Bernoulli effect is okay. Let's get this. I'm gone first. Move this over here for a second. It's the ability to channel air and make it move faster as it goes through areas. So you have, everyone knows, like, even though if you have, so the part of the building's bombed out, boom. So you close that off a bit. You channel the air through the columns. All these are considered windows. And then you put wind turbines inside of all of the hallways using Arduino techniques to channel, create wind vanes at different points, and you're channeling the air through the building. So this might be one story, then you channel it up to the second story, and you snake it back down. Then you take it down through the hallways. Since no one's going to be able to live in these buildings anyways, use that to increase the wind, the air circulation. Then you're going to, and then use voltage and current adders to increase the current and try to turn abandoned buildings into wind funnels. And then you take wind turbines, smaller turbines, to create enough power, even if it's nothing, maybe not much, something. I need a fluid dynamicist, a double E, and an ME to be able to do this. Put your heads together and make this happen. Now the big corps are going to try to say, "Whoa, blee, because they'll know if you have a distributed network of power plants, then they're going to start wondering how can they get paid. Well, then help out, you little dimwits. Great PR. The amount of power you're going to look at the large, offshore wind turbines. You're going to look at the amount of flux that the generation flux, and then you're going to try to match that in parallel through a building, because it's the amount of flux that determines the amount of power. As the wave, I don't have, double E's know what I'm talking about. And double E is electrical engineers. Secondary thing, gamers, where are we with our attacks? They are really trying to try to keep the Wagner group in peace. They've put that northern barrier off of Luhansk. They're trying to stop it from going to Severodonetsk, Savance, I think it is, in the north. Do we? How do we roll down through? When's the optimum time to roll down through? Either go through Crimea. Should we give them maybe one or two? When should we take out the Kerch Bridge? The goal now is not just a counteroffensive. You're going on a full campaign, 6 months campaign. Because remember, it's going to take 2 to 3 years to dislodge them. So a 6 month campaign. Just like Sherman's March to the Sea. This is how you're going to keep your logistics. And remember, and once you do that one, then I'm going to change it up, and we're still 50% combat range on all systems. First you do chaos, whatever's in your brain, then you take it and build out on what, with the help of General Hertling. Anonymous. I will be heading to DC in about a week or so. The 1% is going to try to stop me. I do not know, and I assume that that America will show up. I assume that I will be the only one standing in the breach. But I will stand in that breach. I will uphold my oath, even if nobody else does. But if they do, but I doubt it. But if they do, be ready. Belarus, Russia, Iran, be ready. What happens within this next week to 4 weeks will determine the next 100 years. Will democracy die, or will we live under autocracy? Empire or republic? Will the shining city on the hill light be taken, or will we reaffirm itself as us, as ourselves? Will we have hope for for the world and the future solar system of humanity? Oh, or will we return to savagery and brutality of a brute and animal? These are our choices. It is up to make them wisely. Slava Ukraine. Glory to democracy. And may the flag forever wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave.